All right, we're back with Paul Allen, Green Manorite for Randos number 2. We had a little bit of we'll see how this goes. I'm going to have some kids running through, getting ready for school. But
I
our
have the
last
dog,
conversation,
so
huh?
I have the dog there,
Dog,
so
the
I may
poodle.
be
Yeah,
equally interrupted.
yeah. So, I have a cold. Forgive me for that and all my cold sounds. I'll try to mute myself, but we want to keep doing some of the rando stuff. And the goal here is to do randos part 2 and to talk a little bit about universal basic institutions because, at least in TLC, here we go. People think, I would say a lot of people have thought that my all institutions are inherently demonic is a little bit of a straw man for institutions. So Paul's going to do a little steel man with some, at least of the idea, because you can steel man ideas and we can star man people. So we're going to try to do both of those things, but let's start with some rando stuff, and you can work that in as you see fit or you think is most wise. So in your randos, we had basically gotten up to the point of, we talked a little bit about family and we talked about Notre Dame. Okay, right?
Okay, yeah. And I yes.
Then what?
Um,
What happened then?
I okay. So there's. I went to grad school. I went. It's a dumb story. It's kind of funny. I was dating a girl. She was from Arizona. My backup school was like, well, if this works out, we want to like co-locate. We'll go to Arizona State. Um, and so I met a guy, but I met my who ended up being my sort of my mentor there, Barrett Holt, at one of conference at Notre Dame. We went and I applied to ASU, Arizona State, assuming that that probably won't happen, and it did. As these things work out, um, I broke off. It broke off with the girlfriend, and I ended up in Arizona. Um, and Arizona is far away from Ohio, where I grew up, and Indiana, where I went to school. And first year grad school is quite difficult in economics. It steps things up rather quickly, and and so that first semester was lonely. Um, I spent too much time. I think I was the two things that I spent time on that I shouldn't have. I think it was like alpha testing some video game back then. Um, just I got on through the forums and I was just testing video games for fun in the evening and writing long posts on the blogs. Um, some things haven't changed, uh, and uh, and I went and there was a bar across the street, and gosh, it was easier to go get a burger and a beer at the bar across the street than it was to cook all by myself at home. So I was at the bar more nights a week than was healthy. Um, and it was pretty divey. And there was a lot of drugs there. I was never into drugs, but it's like where I mean there's the meth dealer guy, there was the coke heads, there's the acid head, and and they're like all these guys are like I do all the time because I just go to the bar, have a burger, and drink a beer or two, and that was a weird. I once you talk about when you talk about institutions, that that's a weird one, but you had the same people around that bar many nights a week, and you got to hear all of their stuff. There's a few guys who are like HVAC people at and then we'd talk HVAC, and and mostly I was trying to unwind because I'd go eat at like 9 o'clock at night after like studies. Anyway, so that was part of my life then. I think upon reflection, alcoholism was probably a thing, but I always thought, oh, I'm drinking a lot less than these guys, so it
Yeah,
must be good.
I mean, we've talked about that a lot in the corner. I mean, it can be a slippery slope, and some of that inside your own head that gets pretty relative, because you're just like, well, I just have, 3 or 4 beers a night. I'm not like drinking a 12 pack.
Yeah, like these guys are drinking 8. I'm going half their pace.
Right. Right. So
Yeah,
you must have not got involved in, uh, well, I suppose in grad school, it's a little bit harder maybe to get involved in like whether it be a Christian community or a Catholic community or something like that. And so then you
yeah.
just went the easy cheers route.
So this is where the story is going. So I was like the first 6 months, I was part of actually the parish I'm in now, but it was not really designed for students. And I went there on Sundays, and I went faithfully on Sundays, and then yeah, I think that was really it. Um, and there was a parish on campus. There's like a Newman Center, which was like a Catholic community, but my parents and all the people at the parish were like, "Oh, don't go there. They're super liberal. You don't you don't want to go to that group." And I was like, "Okay." And then for some reason, I there was some mass, and that was the mass I could make. So I went to the Newman Center. Um, Probably it was January 2006. So and it was very welcoming and vibrant,
It's how
and
those liberals get you.
I know it was
How they
like
get you. They're welcoming.
it was welcoming and vibrant, and it was probably it was liberal. That word is so messy. um they had a gay and lesbian fellowship, and they had amazing preaching, and sometimes they did weird stuff. Like there's I think we had interpretive dance on Palm Sunday one year. That happened. And so I started
Giving birth to the rad trads.
yeah, no, it was I got really, and the social message was very big. So I'm going to talk about my friend Mike for a minute because I can talk about him. Um, he was a gregarious guy, and he was a real leader, and he'd finished up undergrad, and he was doing, I think at that point, he was working at one of the Catholic workers' houses. So he did couple years at Andre House, which was basically a soup kitchen in downtown Phoenix. Just like the poorest of the poor in Phoenix. They serve dinner every day. They have a clothes closet. They have showers, and he was full-time staff there for a couple years. And so I started going to Andre House Wednesday nights. We'd basically go, and there's a van full of college students who all loaded up from the university, and then we went downtown and did whatever they needed in the kitchen to staff the kitchen that night. And then we
So quick, was
yeah,
this prompted by Mike or another person, or this was you just saying like I need to be doing something other than going to the bar?
yes. Yeah, no, it's like, and this is like the institutions and the community. you take on the spirit of the community that you're participating in. And I was, I think a lot of it was, all right, what do I do more? Had at least 6 months of this, like this emptiness. I need something. And then here was something that was happening every Wednesday. And then
And
we
this is
had
prompted by the liberals at the Newman Center.
the liberals,
Okay.
yeah. And we
Yeah.
were doing social. I went to El Salvador with our priest, who became my spiritual director and pretty good friend. And he was one of the liberals. Not going to say too much there. I have deep love and respect for him, and that story doesn't end happily. But there's so yeah, so there's also Sunday morning frisbee. So 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, we had a bunch of guys from all sorts of places. I don't know, there's like 20, 25 people, and we'd get together and play pickup frisbee Sunday morning. So my Sundays were, and I got more and more involved. So each year I was increasingly involved. And at the end of grad school, I think my Sunday mornings were frisbee in the morning. I'd go do childcare for the like the 9 or 10 o'clock mass, and help with childcare at church, with my then girlfriend. And then I would participate. The big mass was like a 7 o'clock at night mass, and everyone would. So I was involved in that, and I don't know, I was doing stuff, and then basically I was emceeing and running the 10 o'clock, the late mass. It was either a 9 or 10 mass. I think it changed, which was like the last possible mass in Phoenix. So it was kind of a quiet service, but basically we could never get people to like commit to do stuff at that mass. So I was doing the readings most days, and serving on the altar, and if there was incense, I was in charge of the incense. So it was like a one man. I mean, obviously the priest was there, but in terms of like that support stuff, it was basically me for a couple years, for that mass. And they had daily mass on campus in like the ecumenical chapel. So then I was back to daily mass, and so there was like, but like Mike and Charles, and these are guys. Yeah, so they were real friends and roommates, and so Mike went back to grad school, and he did a degree in climate, or geography, with specializing on like long-term climate stuff. Anyway, so he was doing a PhD, I was doing PhD. We were struggling with trying to date Catholic women and sort of that. I ended up being a once a week volunteer at a home for pregnant women who are homeless. So basically, all right, you get pregnant, you need a place to stay. Here's a house, and it was, and that's how I met my wife. She was a full-time volunteer at the house, and so I just liked holding babies because I was super stressed from all the grad school stuff. So I could just go hang out and hold babies and talk to people for a couple hours a week, and
Awesome.
that was the best. So anyway, so I think that was transformational, and only because there were people like Mike and Charles and a bunch of other people who I won't mention all the names, who were sort of on the same journey in the same place, but doing it much better than I, who are more committed, who were deeper. Maybe I'm very knowledgeable, sort of, but they were living it more, and that sort of drew you in to, okay, there's a lot more I can do here, and what's my role in the church. Um,
So I want to just say something, interject quick.
yeah,
So we got into meeting your wife. One thing
yeah,
that made me think of it because my son's about college age, and I think this is just a bit of good advice for particularly young men going to school or grad school or whatever. Is I think you don't be alone. I think you got to get involved in programs because it really is that you're either going to be alone at your apartment or in your dorm, which isn't going to be good, or you're going to go to the bar, which isn't necessarily great. Or because like these things, even though you're saying these guys are doing more than you, which they probably were, you went to enough things to meet them, to connect to them so that they encouraged you. And then you were doing the Wednesday night thing, you were doing the Sunday morning thing, you were helping the priest for those 2 years, and then you were doing this pregnancy thing where you met your wife.
yeah,
Like that is not, I mean, that's and other girlfriends, I'm guessing. The other girlfriends
yeah,
you had, you probably met in these spots. This is the thing. Do you want a wife? Do you want friends? Get involved in some of the programs that are there, and that will maybe lend into some of your universal basic institution stuff. But anyhow,
yeah, yeah.
your
No,
wife.
and the oh yeah, the first the first fiance didn't work out, so it's like it's not gonna be a straight easy path, but it's you have this support, and you're participating in this common thing, which gives you these foundations for building lives together. And um yeah, what's oh so I was also on like liturgical design for the new chapel, which eventually went up. um so I was like the student rep on the building committee, like picking the colors and the art images, stuff like that. um and then there's so the bishop had enough of some of the things that were happening, and basically removed my removed I don't know, don't want to get into all of the details, but basically he says we're taking over, uh we're taking I'm taking over this parish, and we're putting this new crew in, which the new crew, and so I think a lot of the people who were really invested in the liberal thing really left, and a lot of the people who were kind of the doing a lot of the institutional heavy lifting sort of dispersed. And I think the bishop said, basically wrote a letter and said, hey, if you're here, if you're not a student and you're here because of this other stuff, go find a different parish.
So just to clarify that a little bit without getting into details of uh, some of the dicier stuff or whatever, when you say institutional heavy lifting, you're talking about kind of secondary programs outside of liturgical services, like these. This is what all
Catechesis.
the liberals were doing, but then they were doing other things that the bishop maybe wanted to quell.
Yeah, catechesis, like the RCIA, which is the program for rites for initiation, catechesis, those are things. I mean, just like music, uh, a lot. I mean, there's a bunch of staff positions in a church, and then there's these. It's normally a fairly small core of people that are doing a lot of the institutional decision making, or facilitating within on a volunteer basis. So like a lot of the people who were involved in the church design committees sort of went their own ways. um, and that was um, yeah, that was difficult. I think my friend, he told me ahead of time, he's like, at some point the bishop's going to step in. Or someday I'm really going to upset the bishop. And I think he knew it was coming. And I think my comment was, yeah, yeah, you are. And so I don't know. We could go with this conversation in a lot of different directions. But then, our new priest came in, Father Rob, and he was very traditional in his style of worship, and basically I was sort of at the end of grad school last couple of years, and basically said, all right, I'm gonna stick this out and help with the transition. And so I think, and try to keep the community together as we could. And I think Mike was involved in that too. He was still there finishing up his degree, and we I was teaching. Me and another woman younger than me. We were basically the catechetics crew for basically the rites of initiation. So I was teaching catechism every Sunday and co-running that program for a year, which they didn't have anyone else. So they had me. But I think it was, and that was like, it's sort of in the deep end of, okay, we're going to kind of wing it and try to make this work. And at the same time, we were in a much smaller chapel as we were rebuilding the new chapel, and the buildings had been demolished basically at that point. And so we were in like temporary facilities trying to like get students in the door without any facilities and without really a lot of the institutional people who had been running it for a long time. And so it worked out. And so then at that point I graduated. I was shortly after that dating and then engaged to my wife. And
so did you meet your wife before you graduated or after?
We started dating shortly after I graduated. We had been
You had met her at the pregnancy.
Yeah, we had been working together for like a year at that point, and we had many common friends. And so I think so we started dating that summer, and I think the following fall we both knew at that point what we wanted in terms of, okay, we wanted marriage. For a while I was deserting priesthood, and I had come around to know I wasn't my vocation was marriage. And so I think there was I think there was sort of peace in that. And then we moved to Minneapolis together. And I started at the Fed.
Just because you fell in love with the liberals.
I fell in love
with the Newman Center in Arizona, and you're like, Minneapolis.
I was feeling very. Yeah, it was the Obama years. It was easier to be a liberal. So that was. But then I was in Minneapolis for 5 years. We were in sort of a traditional parish there, and we were involved. I did what was it, the Justice and Charity or something like that, Charity and Justice Committee, basically social justice sort of thing. And we did like seminars on just war, and I wrote about I did summaries of Francis's encyclicals in the bulletin, stuff That's the
Nice.
sort of stuff I did.
So what years were you here? I'm just wondering if we had overlap. And then what parish were you at?
Um, I was at Our Lady of Lourdes, so I was like as downtown as you can get in Minneapolis.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
because you were at the Fed, yeah.
so I was at the Fed, and we had a townhouse sort of across the Mississippi, so
Oh,
in the Northeast.
like St. Anthony, Maine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we yeah, so I walked across the Hennepin Bridge to get to work for like several years, or 4 years. So that was 2012 to 2017.
That's such a pretty church. That
Um,
whole area right there.
Our
Yeah.
Lady of Lourdes, yeah, it was beautiful. It was. There's a lot of money that came into. There's so many churches in that Northeast area, and all of there are these immigrant churches, and
Mm-hmm.
all of them are just beautiful buildings. And I think a lot of them are empty. There's actually the Tridentine, not Trinity. It's the traditional Latin Mass people.
Mm.
They have a church there, which is beautiful. I go there on occasion. It's not my thing, but it's a beautiful church.
What's that church?
I'm gonna get it wrong.
Oh,
I
okay.
it's it's a few blocks from there. But they're literally like,
Church of All Saints, maybe?
it is probably Church of All Saints. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
right. There's easily 6 or 7 like Catholic Orthodox churches within walking distance of us.
Yeah. There's a Maronite church right there.
There's that Maronite church with they're the farmers market right there. I think it's like St. Boniface,
Mm-hmm.
which is the German church. I'm not sure what its status is these days, but
Yeah.
but anyway, so that was yeah, and so we met a few friends there, and it was sort of young family, just trying to do young family stuff and network with young families. Eventually, so the thing at the Fed, it went for its course. I think we discussed that a little last time, but then is looking for the next thing, and we really love the community in Arizona. So I think we were both really happy to get work back in Arizona and sort of rejoin the communities. So we were Mike and his wife Annie were still at the Newman Center, sort of providing that community support layer as as sort of financial and institutional people in the Newman Center in its sort of rebuilding. It's rebuilt in its new form, and so they really welcomed us back, and we joined the Newman Center. And so we spent 6 years sort of at the Newman Center in back in Phoenix, or in Tempe. So, and then what's there to say about that?
Can you tell me I mean, I'm sure you know this. What is the history of the Newman Center? Because they're all associated with schools.
Yeah. So John Henry Newman really had this focus on the university as center Catholic learning and formation of the youth. I'm not an expert on that, but I guess the Newman Center was the name given. It has to go back to like the 50s or earlier for the parishes that are connected to universities.
Okay.
And if done well, I mean, there's like a whole classroom component. Like you're also teaching theology, you're doing Bible studies. There's all of these other things which are targeting kind of Catholic learning within that environment. So I
All
think,
right. And then I want
yeah,
to, so you're back in Arizona, you're at the
back in
Newman Center.
Arizona.
We kind of skipped. When did you get married?
Oh yeah, we got married. We got married. So, what's the timeline? So I finished up grad school, so it was in the Great Recession, and it was like impossible to find a job. So, um, I basically went and worked for a internet startup in Scottsdale and in the Phoenix area. And so we were dating, and so I was there for 6 months until. So the guy who did the startup is the guy who founded Carvana, but a good story. I programmed the back end of the sort of the recommendation engine for his coupon website that he did before Carvana. Um, and so that venture didn't work out, and so that's when I think that and then I got married, and then we moved to Minneapolis. So I think there was a bubble between finishing grad school and those were the 6 months where I learned how to program, and they were indispensable. But
You have to get a little bit of, I mean, we got to talk about programming a little bit. It is the TLC. Somebody's got to be programming.
yeah, it was a. I mean, I was an R scripter, so I don't know if that means something to some people, but statistical languages, it was. But we were at a startup, and I needed to actually produce code that was clean and usable. So it was really startup culture for a bit, working long days. Not sure if the money was ever going to come through, and it didn't eventually. But I think then he told me, "Oh, we're having." I was at the Fed, and he was like, we have this new startup. We're doing this car thing." It's like, nah, I'm good. So,
Man, but that's like essentially it would have gone well if you would have gotten involved in that, I'm guessing.
oh, it would have. Had I gotten involved in that, that would have been a different set of struggles. And
Right.
if I'd gotten in early,
Great financial success.
it could have been good financially.
Yeah.
um, but but anyway,
So you were
good on that.
there, the venture, got married, moved to Minneapolis to Fed, and
Yeah,
then you're back. That's probably kind of after the recession, right?
it was. Yeah, no, it was 2017. Moved back to Phoenix,
Okay.
and been
We like
working.
just missed each other probably in Minneapolis. Not that we would have overlapped, but anyhow.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. Minneapolis is a weird place. Who knows where we could have run into each other?
Yeah, it's pretty small. I mean, in a lot of ways, but yeah, who knows?
The yeah. So I'm I've been doing banking ever since. And now I don't know. I do sort of economic outlook, and I do econ talks for clients, stuff like that sometimes, and that's why I don't want to talk way too much about economics, because that's work. And um but it's also what I'm paid to do, so it's like, in respect to those people, I kind of don't do public forecasting.
Non-competes. Your non-compete with your public wisdom.
I mean, yeah, it's like, if there's I think it's more gentleman's agreement.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just being playful. So, you kids?
Yeah, I have 3 kids. Well, 2 in middle school, 1 in elementary, and we're
Catholic
public
school?
we're public school people.
Uh-oh.
Um, we
Don't
I
tell
went to
Jordan Hall and Annie Crawford and Gray.
I yeah, I when my wife and I met, she was very, I mean, a lot of the issues I had in earlier relationships was co-location and whose job gets priority and that sort of like the competing career things. And my wife, she has a math degree and an art degree, like, and she her position was, yeah, I'd rather stay at home and do art.
Mm, yeah.
And sort of and she was doing the full-time volunteer thing at the time, and career ambitions were not that interesting to her. So right now she does natural family planning coaching. um, I am also trained as a natural family planning coach, so uh, we can that's a whole discussion on its own.
Well, I could
Uh,
tell you sometime. I'll tell you my wife and I's experience going to a natural family planning class and seminar. It was something.
um, it's yeah, it's really a data and self-knowledge sort of thing, and it can be, and the approach we take is sort of a maximalist approach. All the tools you can bring to bear we're happy with, and like this is, and it's really just, all right, how do you best understand where your body's at? But she does that, and then she's running the art program at the local elementary school because we don't have funding for art. So the PTA has funded the art program, and she's running it this year. She took over this year, but she's been involved for the last several years. And we run the science fair, which is also sort of a PTA thing. So our thoughts on schooling is that you need to be involved, and I think we don't have the temperament to be homeschool people, and I think we're aware of that. And COVID was very difficult, and yeah, so I think I do believe that forest school is a good thing, and getting the kids to go run around in the outdoors is important. But I I don't think everyone can homeschool. We grew up with a lot of my friends are homeschooled growing up, and I mostly went to public school. And I had a buddy who spent his freshman year of high school learning the guitar, and he got really good at the guitar. And his parents were like huge, like national proponents of homeschooling and the benefits of homeschooling, and they ran the homeschool group. And he was in high school sophomore year in school because like you can't spend your freshman year learning the guitar. um, and it's even you every kid is so different, and the needs of each child need to be taken on their own merits. And some kids don't, and so there's a time of life and just a temperament of the child thing. There are kids who can only homeschool and who do so incredibly diligently and will read nonstop, like things that are relevant, and then there are kids that will learn the guitar for a year.
Right. There's probably worse things to do than learn the guitar, but yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's a
He currently
complicated
has a
thing.
PhD in theology. He turned out fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a hard thing about just the way the system is, and like I suppose if all of us were allowed, if we, Ron Paul style abolish the Department of Education and eliminated property taxes and I could just hire private tutors, you know, maybe it would be different. But yeah, it's the school situation is very complicated and kids are so diverse and there's a lot of problems with public school, but sometimes I think if if you do it the way that you're doing it, where you are doing and did do it, being highly involved. Sam Tiedemann does that too. Like he's on the PTA board, and if you're running the science fair and the art program and you're there and you're very involved, I mean that's the way to do public school.
It and it serves the you are now participant. Like here we have an institution. I mean, the local like public schools are not an institution. Our local elementary school, or if it was light out, you could probably see it from here. Uh, it's it's an institution. It has this dimension. It has the upwards and the downwards. It's getting its funding from the state and to a lesser extent federal, but it is the families and the participation in the classroom of the parents that make the classroom. So it's yeah, I would say that's how you have to do it. So my oldest, he would listen to audiobooks nonstop and just I mean he would absorb information, but getting him into the classroom like he's played cello since he was this 3, and in the last couple years he's in the middle school orchestra, and how he interacts with music now that instead of I'm practicing my pieces for my lesson versus hey I get to play with my friends, and we just he thinks about rhythm and listening to how this is in context, and now the music he's playing is contextualized, and I don't think you get that without an orchestra, which
Yeah. No,
public
that's
school has
good.
an orchestra, which is that's sort of and but I think that's like a microcosm. I think he what he needs is he needs to be in those participatory situations so he can learn how to interact, and he just doesn't read or listen to audiobooks all day or do science YouTube.
But even that, like that's geez, you have those are decent ways to waste their time. Although your kids maybe they don't have cell phones yet, and so they're
Oh
still
no, they do, but
oh, do they?
they we're we are not following the recommendations of so during COVID. My oldest, sorry, he was in second grade, second and third grade, and he basically binge watched science videos, which we like. Oh, okay, yeah, you can watch science videos on YouTube, um, and he knows quite. He's quite knowledgeable in the area now, because he would like listen to like hours on end of just like astronomy, physics, whatever, biology, and he just binged this stuff and he loved it, and he's
So this isn't prompting by you. You just have a child who's like, if I'm going to be on YouTube, I'm going to binge watch science videos.
I think there are restrictions on what he's allowed to do on YouTube, and there are things which we definitely say no to, but I think he is content, and we're fine with him binge watching science videos at that point. I think it was hard for him. Like the classroom work wasn't taking up the time when they were stuck at home, and he was just getting stuff done. Like he got through fourth or fifth grade math in second grade when it was like self-led. So it's like, and this is not to like brag on my son. I think a lot of kids can do that if they're focused. But I think like what he needs is to put a social context into his learning and realize that he's going to have to interact with people his whole life. So having him in public school is helpful.
Is he pretty just introverted? Like he could just do his own thing if left to himself?
Yes. I think, yeah, I think there needs to be, like some people, yeah, he's just naturally introverted. He needs to be prompted to do the social stuff. And that's fine. But I think like the awareness of that as a parent, and like if I homeschooled him, it would be like pulling teeth to get him to go hang out with friends, even though if he enjoys hanging out with friends once he does it. But
Just very content on his own.
yes,
Well, let's.
I'm
Do you
sorry,
wanna? Do you want to transition to laying out kind of universal basic institutions? Do you want to talk about that for a while?
yeah, let's talk about that. Oh, I'll transition slowly.
Yeah, do it.
So yeah, my friend Mike, he died about 18 months ago, and
I'm sorry.
he was no, and we'd known each, and he was in my wedding, and he was sort of a pillar of that community just when I was kind of finding my way in grad school. And then he and his wife, I knew his wife long before she was his wife, but yeah, we were kind of raising kids sort of in community, and we do Thanksgiving there. And so he died suddenly, suddenly and unexpectedly. And I think more than anything, well, you pray, you support the family, but it's like, I mean, just remember your death. It becomes real. And what are the things I want to write down? What are the things I want to think about and leave mostly for my sons and daughter? And I think of the things that have changed, like I've always kind of written notes and sort of had a file of things I was thinking about, but I've sort of been more intentional on, okay, what do I really want to spend my time thinking and writing on that matters to me? And so Mike and I would have these great political conversations, and he was yeah, he was. The person who was a conservative but really hated Trump, and and really loved the local community and was invested sort of in this idea of subsidiarity. And I think that having some of that is like carrying over into what do I want to spend my time thinking about. So start at participation. We we embody the spirits of those around us, those cultures. And this is very basic TLC stuff. So when I went from the bar, and I mean, there are things that I embody at the bar that I become one of the drinkers and the moaners who kind of is complaining about whatever. And there's a culture, and it's a thing. And if I'm sitting at the bar, I'm going to be embodying that spirit of the bar, and I'm going to bring the spirit of the bar home. And that's a path. And then if I'm part of the Frisbee group and like working the soup kitchen, like sitting with the poor people eating, or poor people, the homeless who are really destitute, eating a meal with them and having conversations with them, I'm embodying a culture. I am embodying that. And in the friendships that we, like, I mean, talking a lot about Mike, I think this was intentionally kind of a theme. Like, I embody what I learned from being friends with Mike for many years, and taking on the values that he was representing, and he in turn was embodying those values and spirits. So anyway, so there's this participation upwards, and the institution is a vessel for the institution it's a formal vessel. It's a form which that perpetuates these cultures and communities. So anyway, so behind this is like my fundamental ethic is really this participatory ethic. And I guess I'm an economist, but I really kind of hate utilitarianism. I would say, like, I would lay out my ethic in 3 parts. It's stewardship for that which participates in me. So that which I've been put in responsibility over, such as my body, my lawn, holding stewardship for that, and caring for that, pruning that as needed. And then participation in communities participation in communities and institutions that are good. So what do we mean by good? I guess that's the point of an ethic. So if I'm aligning with the telos of that institution, that is a good participation. So if I'm an accountant for my role, there's a proper role within that which I participate. So my role within the family is father, and with the role of father that comes some responsibilities. And so basically this is a virtue ethic, but I view it virtue ethic as these participations within the institution. So a good participation is I am acting for the good of my family, for the good of my bank, when I fill my role within that. So acting in line with the telos of that which I participate in. and then secondly, and then like the third of the point is participating in good institutions. So I can be the best accountant for the mob, but I, I can be aligned with the telos of the mob, but that the telos of the mob is detracting from the broader social. So it's acting against the telos of society. So it's this recursive thing where the institutions I participate in, my family participates in broader community. My bank participates within a banking system within, and then within communities where it's providing funding. And so if I know my bank is acting in usurious ways where it's acting against its community, I should not. It is now the mob, and I should not participate in it. So I think this is my ethics, sort of in these three parts.
Right. Can you repeat your second one? I had a child leaving and I missed it because you had stewardship for
stewardship, acting consistent with the telos of that which I participate in. And then the third is participate in things which I can see are good. I mean, there's a limited information on that third point where you may not know how far up, if it's you're participating in something bad, but you kind of look up and see the best you can and try to participate within that is good. So I guess and this leads to like an accounting in your life. What am I participating in? How am I participating in it? But also, what am I participating in? And I would say, and so there are. All right. So I think there's universe, and I think all people are participating in something, or else they're living in this really dead, meaningless life. They may just be participating in the bar, and then you need to think about that. And so I think the response to AI is often, oh, we need to fill people's income. And my sense is the response to be AI really needs to be, we need to fill these people's participatory, their participatory interactions, where if your job is removed, it's not just I don't have an income anymore, although it is that. It is, I find, if I'm doing it right, I'm finding purpose and meaning in the work I'm participating in, or at least I understand my role within that. Like, if I may be doing some menial labor and I may be flipping burgers, but at least I understand, yes, this is an institution which provides people with sustenance, and I'm participating in the good of my community by providing them delicious burgers.
Right. And that's all of that, everything that you just said to me is a very gross, simple understanding of broadly capitalism, and I'm not saying Marcus in like the Adam Smith way, but like as it's become to be understood as like just capital. Everything is the point of capital. It's just making income, even saying like menial labor, because that's just like, because the whole point is to make money so you can consume and live and pay taxes. It's not like, what are we participating in? What are we building? What are we creating? What are we doing? I'm feeding people. Like, that's a very different way to construe your reality.
And the monetary system is it should just be an accounting system to help us sort of justly keep track of some of the distribution of resources once we are all participating in the society. I will take criticism on that point, but I think for someone to find meaning and purpose, which is something we care about around here, I think need to you need to sell on, all right, how is this a meaningful participation in society? So when I'm hiring people, I basically, one of my interview questions is, all right, what does a bank do? Like how does it operate? And I am pitching that, okay, the bank is operating to provide the ability for other companies within our community so that they can grow, make more widgets, do their thing that they want to do. We're going to provide with them the capital, and we want to provide it responsibly because we don't want them to get out over their skis and make decisions which are unwise. We're providing sort of a regulating role, a second line of we're providing some opponent processing for their borrowing decision, and we're going to ask the question, no, will your business model really work?
Right. That's like the love is the willing the good of the other, because if we just loan you money in a like usury type way where we're just trying to leverage the money as much as we can to make as much capital as we can, and who really cares if you're successful or not as long as we end up on top, well, that's not a good bank.
That's not a good bank. No. Yeah. And I think we want to say no to projects we think are going to put you in a bad position financially, because we want to be in the position where we're both able to get out of it, or we need to know, okay, you have the money to lose on this, so that if the project does go south, you're not going to hurt personally. It's not
like the opposite of The Big Short,
yeah, and that's good bank. That's like what banking isn't good. So I'm trying to sell to my people, all right, this is the good that the institution is doing. We can ask questions on, are we doing that among ourselves internally? But then the second part is, all right, you're in this team. How does this team help achieve that goal? And so how is what my team doing in service of the telos of the organization? It's in turn serving a broader banking community. And if it's not following the broader banking community rules, it's going to be put in timeout. And so there's these institutional lattice, and it fails. And this is not like, oh, this always works. It's like part of it is we need to have the robustness for that. People are going to create these userist banks. They're going to manipulate people. They're going to do the wrong thing. And we need to have the robustness in the communities which it participates in, but also bottom up. Hey, I don't want to go work for someone who's doing usury. And we need, but the society does need to have a way to purge bad institutions.
So I want to go back through some of what you were saying before about institutions, do a little clarifying and a little pushing back, explaining why I think where I was coming from with all institutions are inherently demonic, and then see what you have to say so we can do some opponent processing about this.
All right.
So you were talking about form versus formal. You brought that up, whereas like, because one of the distinctions that comes up all the time when we're talking about institutions, and people will talk about marriage as an institution and whatever, and I say I really like the word body. And the way that I think about it is in terms of bodies. Like forms are bodies, and you could think about it even within an angelic hierarchy. So like a marriage is a body. People could say it's an institution. I much prefer the word body because of, and the reason is why is probably the difference between formal and form, because form is just like morphe, it's a body biblically. Whereas formal denotes certain kinds of almost legislative stricture. And I think we think of those things in terms of propositional and systems. like formalities, you know? And that, because what I think a lot of times what happens, because I agree with a lot of the stuff that you're saying and the good of institutions. I think the problem happens at scale when you systematize things and you lose these kinds of personal interactions that you can have at a good local bank. And then all of a sudden you're caught up in levels and levels and levels of bureaucracy, which allow for a lot of funny business. Like in a small local bank, you couldn't do the Big Short is only possible with a federal and arguably global economic system that you can manipulate to the level with, like, because I mean, I can't even lay out all the like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all these different systems that are within that and how big that they got. You couldn't do that at a small local bank where it's just like, I'm going to go get a loan on like a property that I want to invest in for an investment property. You can't do that at a small local bank. You can't manipulate the system with bureaucracy to the same level.
Yeah. So
because it allows for a lot of BSing, antichrist, manipulation, deception in a systematic way where they say like, oh, this is good, until you don't see the collapse that's being manipulated at the biggest levels.
Yeah. So I'm going to sort of take this question separately, and all right, and then we'll talk about basic in the universal basic institutions. So the body has some formal, like your face has a couple eyes, a nose, a mouth, and these are working together towards a common end within the body, within the family. There is a form of motherhood. There's a formal
structure.
There's motherhood is a thing biologically, and then the cultural thing, which some people hate, where it interacts, it has an interplay with fatherhood, and there's an opponent processing there that sometimes takes place in the protection of the family, in the raising of children, in the stability of the marriage, and I think the role of father and the role of mother, and then the proper role of child. Like, my children should do chores, they should be open to learning, they should, like, these are things that we're not just putting on them arbitrarily, but we put on them so that they can one day properly be father and mother of their own accord. And so there's an autopoietic thing that's happening within the family, and part of what these roles are so that the forms can create the next generation of family. So
yes, and for that, quickly, like, that's
yes.
when I don't want to break your flow, but like when I think there's a kind that the child can have a rebellion against that's just due to immaturity, but the child can also sometimes sense when parents are becoming like St. Paul says, do not exacerbate your children, and they're becoming dictatorial, and they're just giving commands because out of power, because they don't actually want their good for the kid. They just, they want their kid to just stop frustrating them. But kids can sense that. But like all those are relationally, there's no bureaucracy there.
Yeah, my 6-year-old and I have this conversation, and he gets frustrated at me. I tell him, like, hey, you can't be watching videos right now. And then his response is, yes, master.
Yeah.
like sarcastically, the only way a 6-year-old can do it. And it's like, no, this isn't me dictating my will on you. It's, I want you to be formed as a better person. I'm trying to properly do the father thing here.
But in order for that to work well, right, the child has to trust you. It's all rooted in trust. Because if it's not trust, then there's weird dynamics that start happening.
Yeah, and I think with proper distance, you kind of like my father was an incredible exemplar of a lot of good participating fatherhood, and there's many good things, and in some ways, like there's like, okay, these are things I'm going to do differently as a father, having experienced what that was like. And I think that's okay. um but I think I guess the main point is, I think the within all of these institutions, we you need to have, they're autopoetic in a sense that there are roles that are played to continue the institution and to maintain it. um, and so at a bank you need there's at something like a bank you need many rules on how you take deposits and lend money, so that don't so you have enough liquidity and you can take the losses. So there's like there's many rules which I know a lot about and are not that interesting, but that's you need this knowledge, and you either need someone very intelligent who can instinctually make the right decisions,
Right.
or you need it written down so that the next generation of bankers sort of understands these things, and then as they get wiser and understand, they come to understand, okay, these are the rules where we have some flexibility, and here
Yeah.
are the ones where we really get in danger. And I
Right.
think there's a
Sorry.
both hands. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So two things to that point. The first is, did you watch Paul's talk with Marcus?
Not all of it, no.
Okay. All right. So
There's been a lot.
right. So there's a section in there that I was just thinking of, because you were talking about, you have to have these rules, all this structure within a bank, this formality, right? For people to know what to do so they can play the proper roles in the institution. I think the question then becomes, when do we know? And you went there a little bit. There have to be people that are older enough and experienced enough and wise enough to know when to break the rules, because there is no rule to tell you when to break the rules. You can't do that, because then you're kicking the can. It's an infinite regress of rules. At some point you have to have a person who decides when to break the rules. And then the other thing is that part of the problem, my wife says this the other day. Like, I can't remember who she was calling. She was calling someone where she was trying to, and this will happen very often, is you come to the problem where you either call someone and you get like an AI robot where they just have an auto response, and you're just like, human, give me a human, give me a human being, give me a human. No, 000, give me a human. And then eventually you maybe get to a human, but now my wife has this term where she calls them half humans, because you'll maybe get to the point where you get to a human being, but they are so
Yeah.
like locked into the script, to the rules, that you're just like, no, stop it. And she said she got to the point where she went back and forth with this guy, where she kept asking something and he told her the same thing like 7 times, and she was like, no, stop. She's like, you may not say that again. Do not say that again. That is not what I'm talking about. And it's like, and essentially, I think you see where I'm getting at with my question.
Yeah.
Is there are people that just, you essentially become an NPC because you're just following the script, and somewhat we lose our humanity when those systems, which are meant for the good, become absolute, and you don't even know how to have discernment anymore. And when do you break the rules? When do you have discernment? Within institutions, and at scale, it becomes a problem, I think.
I struggle with this because I think there are people who there are roles within the institutions where not everyone's a decision maker, and someone's an implementer, and sometimes you need to talk to a decision maker, and what you have is an implementer. And I don't know if there's a universal capacity for everyone to be a decision maker in these. Sometimes the participation in the structures they can handle is something like an NPC. Um, I I'm a big proponent of formalizing exception processes. So this is like when you're writing a policy, you need to formalize in it how you handle exceptions and who is the person or persons that allow you to deviate from the rules. And then you need to practice. You can't be like all upset when somebody uses an exception process, because there are going to be instances where you need a person making decisions, and you need accountability. That person needs to be accountable for deviating from the rules in those situations. But I think I'm agreeing with you. I think you need the formalisms are often to educate you and bring you to sort of like to pass on some of the wisdoms that have come before you, and sort of set guardrails for people who do not have those wisdom.
Yeah. Right.
But you also need it's the people with it's really more the people within the roles and understanding their roles within the institution that provide these forms, and not the written rules. And we get to these like structural sorry, Hollings. We'll talk about Holling some other day. But you get to these rigidities where your structures become so rigid with the forms, the forms as in the pieces of paper, which
Yeah.
and then the formal governance, where you cannot withstand the winds of a storm. And then you crack. And I think that's where like pruning is essential within institutions. An institution must prune. If it doesn't prune, it will crack. And I think you get a lot of rigidities, especially in calcified institutions, where they are going to crack and break because they are not doing the pruning and the flexibility along the way. All right, let me circle back on the second question. My bank may be participating, someone else's generic bank could be participating in a market which is acting against the good of many people, the people. And I would say it is my institution's responsibility to understand that. And this is where it's the layers are complicated, and it's a complexification issue where I think a bank can unwillingly like work for the mob, for example, like maybe literally unknowingly work for the mob. So let's say one had a bank in Florida, and one wasn't really checking the names too closely of people who are signing up, and you could literally be working for the mob. And you are participating in an evil, which then corrupts your organization, because now that entity which you are participating in is going to leak down. It's going to pay people off. It's going to do things that put people in moral quandaries, and so you're going to have, by that participation, you are then corrupted. The finance companies that were doing the subprime mortgage in 26, 27, they were, because there's this big demand for, we need more mortgages, just get them from anybody. These finance, some like good people that like, I want to give mortgages to people, help people out. They find themselves, now that they're participating in this market, which is not taking into account the well-being of the people or the institutions as a whole, or the well-being of the people as a whole. It's a bad institution. Now you're corrupting yourself, but now these finance companies, which were probably pretty good to start with, they're corrupting themselves by participation. So yeah, and I think you can have like broad corruption of institutions by means of these participations. And do demonic institutions exist? Yes, absolutely. Are institutions necessarily demonic? I would say that I think the church is an institution, which is hopefully the body of Christ.
Yeah, I like that. I like the second part.
Or a participation in the body of Christ.
So to riff off that quickly,
Yeah.
So like the whole housing crisis and recession that happened in 2008, and then what happened after that is we bailed out the banks, right? Because they were too big to fail. And my whole thing was always like, they're too big to not fail. And what I would say is, because when you get that big, that's where the bureaucracy and the systems become able to be manipulated at that level that allows for that kind of collapse, because it's such a monolith that you don't have all this separation of powers and identity that are contributing to the thing voluntarily and independently, that are checks and balances on the biggest thing. So I would almost say you get too big to not fail. And this is why I don't like, and then just to cap it off quickly with the church thing, this is why I really like thinking of the church as a body versus an institution, because a body is necessarily that. You have all the different parts of your body that are working in conjunction. This is why St. Paul talks about the body. And your head, yes, is in charge of all of it, but then we're learning now that the gut actually has just as much neural pathways, if not more, going backwards to the brain. And so your body has to work harmoniously in conjunction, or else you will die. Like a big system like that, eventually it will get there, but not without destroying tons of other things along the way. And so like the church, Rod Dreher said this, I think, somewhat, where I don't know if this is true, but he said like the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, he said like the Catholic Church is an institution with a way attached, and the Orthodox Church is a way with an institution attached. And I don't know if that distinction is completely true, but because of my institutional reservations, I don't like calling the church an institution.
Yeah, there's a lot here. I think the term that some people may have used at a particular point in time was too big to manage. And some people may have said that about certain institutions at a certain point in time. We'll leave it at that. I think that it is mega institutions. They are not institutions. They're confederations. Because there is simply, it's.
Well, what I was saying, like a body would be more like a confederation.
Yeah, I would say there's a functioning confederation, and then there's the body with five stomachs, and it's like, all right, we have five stomachs. We're a confederation of stomachs.
Right.
Um, we're a mouth with five stomachs. What do we do with that? And it's hard, and the confederations, if they are not, I mean, if they're not if they're not autopoietic, they're going to fail. There's a truism. No,
Well,
I
right,
think
because like if there's five stomachs in one mouth, well, like you can't have that many stomachs, or else the confederation will cease to be a confederation.
yeah, and there's and now is this a functional confederation, or is this just a bunch of stomachs working in parallel, not knowing what's happening across? And I think there's a lot of that which happens. I think the basic institution is central here. Um, I we are participating. I think basic, by what I mean by basic, is irreducible. It's down to a form where I it operates as an entity on its own. So this is like the differentiation between my local elementary school and public school system, or even like the district of the public school system. The local there's a sense in which the local elementary school is that basic institution. It participates in institutions above it, but it is sufficiently independent in how it's acting that when I participate, I'm not participating in all of the public school system. I'm participating in our elementary school, which is a block that way. So I think that we we have this level shift issue where I feel like I need to participate. Like I can never participate in the Catholic Church as a whole, except in going to my local parish and participating in liturgy at my local parish with my local priest, with my brothers and sisters in that parish, and the and like my men's group, like these
Right.
things that I'm like actively doing, which are relational and like, but I mean, the mystery of the church is that, and I was at mass, I was thinking about that. I'm like, I'm receiving communion. I bet Luke's receiving communion yesterday, and
Well, I stayed home because I
maybe
was sick.
you stayed home since you was sick. I was thinking, hey, maybe Luke's receiving communion, and this is one body of Christ, at least in my thinking. And I, even though like my active participation in the community is my local parish, and honestly, my participation in the Catholic Church is participation in the parish.
Yeah, well, and that's like so this girl that used to pop onto our channel and interact with TLC, she was talking about public education and how it needs to be, um, and something that we've lost in public education. And this is related to the church and what you're talking about with the parish, is it needs to be parochial, because otherwise it's just identical replicationism, and you're just creating, it's like the Ford factory where you're just pumping out a Taurus, a Taurus, a Taurus, a Taurus. And somehow the church needs to be universal in that we're all participating in the same transcendent things that happen everywhere. That's the universal component, but it has to be particular to your own place and contextual and geography and people, or else it's not, or else it's trying to put a kind of rote formality on a local entity that's not appropriate to that local spot, you know?
And like, I guess Barnes and Noble, this may be, I don't know how true this is, but what I read is that Barnes and Noble, their why they are still why they are growing and opening stores. They changed their strategy to give the local branch managers much more control over which books they put out front, which books they order, and they came to realize that the stuff I put in the Tempe bookstore and the Minneapolis bookstore may not be the same as what you want to put in like Proho or New
Right.
York City, or like and the suburbans are going to be different than the urban, and like just give the manager knows who comes in his door, and you can put that book in
Or
front
it'd
of
be
him.
a better store if they did, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, and then you can allow people to fail locally and it doesn't take down the whole thing. um so I think my I think we're more in agreement on this. There's radical subsidiarity. I'm sort of playing with this idea of radical subsidiarity, where our focus and participation should be, as to the extent possible, at the level of those basic institutions where we are personally engaged in the community, and it has some of these forms, but we're kind of at the ground level, like we're running the science fair program, or like I mean, I have a whole list of like the types of things, but like soccer league, old man soccer league, like I'm not on the team now, but I was midfielder on the old man soccer league, and that was a role that was serving a telos for that group. And this wasn't like deep institutions, but it was something that I was directly participating in, which was for the betterment of my body and and the guys fellowshipping. Um, but I think, like, going back to the audit of what are the basic institutions I am part of, and then are those institutions participating in, because institutions are going to participate in higher levels of institutions that I will not have visibility or control over. And like, to the best of my knowledge, am I unintentionally participating in something that is getting corrupted? Like, I could see a point where the Tempe school system went super woke. I mean, it's Arizona, so this is less likely, but it's sort of, now my values are the values that are being pushed down by the thing it's participating in. I like, okay, I can't participate, even if I'm engaged in the school system. The stuff being pushed down is stuff that is not something that I got to opt out of, and that's fair. But I the more that we keep these entities, even our parishes, like, focused on how are we a good parish and a good community together, and like, not how are we a organization that gets out the vote for national politics. I think the better it is for us and the children, and the more we can really do the work of God in the parish.
Right. So I want to throw out a couple. We're probably getting relatively close to
Yeah, we have
wrapping
another
up,
10-ish minutes.
but I want to throw out a couple examples. You may not have adequate time to respond, but like, so one of my problems with the broad American global economic system and even like the stock market is, like, for example, from what I know, most of the stock market, when you really get down to it, at the highest levels, if you really break down and follow the money to who's owning most of it, it's like State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock. And BlackRock, apparently, I heard at one point, is close to owning something like 60% of American um, like residential homes, essentially. And like, and who are the entities that really own those homes, and whether they're American or international or who knows. So that's like one illustration. Then another one that I saw is RFK the other day was just he used this illustration of Smithfield pork producers and how like the ways and regulations in which we've done hog barns is eventually Smithfield ended up owning most of the processing and hog operations in Iowa and in the US, and then they were bought out. So really like most of the hog operations in the US now are owned by China. And like all that's a problem.
Oh, yeah, no. I yeah,
And if we're like local parochial and you don't allow for as much big scale stuff, that kind of thing's impossible.
so the stock market, the equity thing is especially interesting. Like, what's your basic financial advice? Invest in an index fund, and so you get well diversified exposure to the US economy. It's it is a optimal investment strategy for an individual. It's it's an equilibrium where now you have, but if everybody takes that strategy, nobody is invested in the equity of any one company. You have no interests in those companies, so you have these huge dollar marks. That's what the Vanguard and a lot of these things are. They're just people pooling in these funds, diversified funds. And I will fully agree that this is the optimal strategy if you are like, it's well diversified, and if you want to optimize your money, yeah, that's the dollar strategy.
If the goal is capital, if the big god is large C
But
capital,
no, it would the the ownership of capital comes with responsibilities for these companies. So you're abdicating responsibility to it, you're giving a lot of free capital that comes along with no accountability, and then the accountability is in a subset of people who are like activist investors, for example, who know that most of the capital is just dumb, and now they can go in with a smaller amount of capital and manipulate how the company is being run. Um, and I think there is a lot of issues with rigidity of the institutions that comes out of this lack of accountability of the institutions. And I don't think the issue is capitalism as much as it is the the securitization structures which separate capital from accountability. Like, I'm not accountable for the if I'm in an S&P 500 company, I'm not accountable for any of the decisions made by any of the boards at any of those companies because I have this de minimis interest. So it's a global, it's like in game theory, it's an equilibrium which is in some ways optimal for the individual but globally suboptimal, which I'm just agreeing with you. so so basically, what was the other point you made?
I talked about the big three, and then I talked about the
Oh,
pork
the pork. Yeah.
Smithfield.
So the principle of subsidiarity is that um, accountability needs to happen at the level that's proper for the thing. And I would say, while I want my local public school to be mostly accountable to me locally, you need to have, there needs to be a level of institution which can hold Smithfield accountable. And I think there's there, yeah. And I would say that, yeah, I would say foreign ownership of the pork production doesn't seem great. I'm sorry. Now that the sun is rising, I'm like totally backlit.
No, that's good. Let's
Oh,
I'll say one other thing related to Smithfield and then we can start wrapping up because it's probably about that time.
yeah.
And future conversations, hopefully people leave comments. The issue with it is, I mean, and this will get into the political aspects of it, is like no doubt the people that own Smithfield, that really own it, if you followed the money and you could figure it out, are investing in American politics, and they're connected. Like there's no doubt all the lobbyists and everything else, like there's a reason all this is happening, and it goes all the way back to money. And the problem is too, is like those local pork farms. I mean, I'm a huge fan of regenerative small scale agriculture. Those things are horrible for the environment. And arguably, they're not even producing healthy food for you, because the difference between industrialized meat and locally raised regenerative agriculture meat is like one gives you cancer and one will take away like 80% of your medical problems. So like it's it's not good for anyone at any level, but it makes a lot of the richest people in the world a lot more money while we destroy the planet and make everyone sick, which also makes people money.
It's the All right, I'm going to hit 2 points. One is not investment advice, but if you're going to put money into the S&P 500, let's say you're a retired person with a lot of income, and you have the option of the S&P 500 or buying a house in your local neighborhood. You can rent to a family that goes to your church. One of those is practicing subsidiarity, and one of those is not. This is not investment advice.
I agree.
However,
Amen.
I think that if you're struggling for money and you need to min max every dollar, okay, maybe you make a different set of choices. But my sense is not that most people are struggling to min max every dollar. I don't know why they make those decisions, but the decision of subsidiarity would be, how do we create more in the local community. And then I have to, how do we talk about the body of Christ but for Rod? And there are institutions are like superpowers. They are extensions of our own capacity that allow us to participate in stuff well beyond what's capable. Like, I can't make loans for large office buildings on my own, but I can participate in the decisions to help to do exactly that in participation in my organization. So to the extent, like, on my own, I can do some helping out at church, helping out at the school, and I can do these small things. It's only, I can't feed the hungry in downtown Phoenix on my own. I need to participate in Andre House, which has this institutional thing, which is already creating that and allows me, like, now I have capacity. I can give, or I can go and be there. And now I actually am doing something about homelessness in Phoenix. And I can do something about giving businesses money in participation in the bank that I can't I can't just with my own capacity, without the institutional support. And so the biggest institution I participate in that I believe in is the church, because it has institutional documents that are orienting ourselves hopefully towards the good. I mean, they are the institutional documents are good. Hopefully we're using them to orient ourselves towards the good. And then we have these liturgies, these ancient liturgies, which are bring us together, bring us into communion, and continue to point us towards death and resurrection of Christ. And my institution, the Catholic Church, has made its fair share of mistakes and errors. But my participation in that institution is a greater participation, a transcendent participation that I can't get. That's the transcendent participation that has changed the world, has changed society at this deep cultural level, that is able to tackle some of these issues which are global or universal. So I would say, what do I mean by the body of Christ? I mean, there's an institution I believe in, and it was founded by Christ, and that participation is the ultimate participation, and the ultimate body or institution. And so I think that's like, how do I deal with Smithfield? I try to be in the best organizations I can be, I guess, that are where I have a role where I can sort of help towards that. And I'm blathering at this point, so
No, did I just hear a timer too? Yeah, we probably gotta.
yeah.
We'll wrap it up.
Thanks,
Well,
Luke.
yeah, thank
fun.
you. This has been good. I'm glad you reached out. I think we got a decent amount of time with the second randos. We actually got to talk about institutions quite a bit. I'm guessing this will not be the last conversation about institutions. It's been one of those recurring motifs in TLC, and hopefully we'll get some engagement on this, and who knows, it might prompt more conversations. But thanks for telling your story, buddy.
Yeah. I think institutions are part of the answer to the meaning crisis, or this, or at least our individual seeking meaning. It needs to be in the consideration, in the stack. So
Yeah, for sure.
we will continue to discuss.
All right.
I
Thanks
appreciate
everybody
it.
for coming. Thanks, Paul. And we're going to stop it there. We're going to end
Meow.
recording. All right. See ya.